Hey y'all, this is Jennifer and welcome to Creation Speaks. Hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we are talking about the very important skill of listening, more specifically empathic listening. What is it? Why is it important? And how do we become more empathic listeners? And some of the talking points that I will be using is from Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is part of the fifth habit, which says that we should listen to understand. Because basically, empathic listening is listening to understand. But first, I ask the question, how are you really listening? So first, let us take a short quiz on how others would rate your listening skills. How would others rate your listening skills? So if you are on live or if you're watching the replay, I'm going to give you certain categories of people, and you are to respond in the chat. Let me know for on a scale from 1 to 4, with 4 being the highest, how do you think the following people would rate your listening skills? So are you listening? Would they say that you are a good listener? So here's the first category, your best friend. So you can just put in the comments best friend dash 1 through 4. Rate yourself on how they believe you, whether or not you're a good listener or not, with 4 being the highest. What about your partner or spouse? Or if you don't have one, perhaps you might use your kids. Might be a good substitute for that one. How about close family members? A close family member. So we're taking a short quiz on how others will rate your listening skills on a scale of 1 to 4, with 4 being the highest. What about a team member at work? And the last one is your boss. How would he or she rate your listening skills? So if you answered 4 to all of the categories, then you probably are a great listener, or others probably think that you are a great listener. However, did you know that there are actually 5 levels of listening? And Stephen Covey talks about these levels in his book and also in the workbook. So the lowest level of listening is ignoring. Basically not listening at all, just ignoring the person who is talking. If you go a step up, then you have pretend listening, and many people call this patronizing. So you may respond to a person communicating with you by just making gestures, but you're really not listening. If you go a step up, the next level is selective listening. And this is when we are hearing bits and pieces of what is being said by the other person, and we're usually hearing these bits and pieces for the purpose of making our own point, making your own point, or responding. And then the next level is attentive listening. So if you answered 4 to all of the categories of the short quiz that we took, then you perhaps may be talking about your attentive listening skills, because this is most commonly called what we call active listening, where you are offering your time, you're offering your attention, and sometimes you're also offering your sympathy to the other person who is communicating with you. And for a long time, I considered myself a good listener because I was able to listen attentively. I was able to listen attentively and respond effectively to what was being heard, to what was being said. But even though I was able to respond, I was listening for the purpose of responding. I was listening for the purpose of trying to fix whatever, if there was a problem or situation that was being explained to me, trying to fix that. I was listening in order to reply, all of which were within my own frame of reference as opposed to the frame of reference of the person that was speaking to me. So if you go a step higher, the highest level of listening, which is today's topic, is empathic listening. And this type of listening involves seeking first to understand rather than to be understood. So if you think about a doctor cannot prescribe anything before he or she makes a diagnosis. So they have to listen to the patient, to what the symptoms are, how they're feeling. They have to take nonverbal cues from the patient in order for them to make the proper diagnosis so they can prescribe the proper medication or solution for the problem. So this is where empathic listening comes into play. Now, I do want to say that empathy is not the same as sympathy. And Covey states this in his book. He says that sympathy is actually a form of agreement and or judgment. But in empathic listening, it releases all judgment. It releases all judgment. It involves you listening with your eyes because you are picking up nonverbal cues that the person is sending out. You are listening with your heart because you are listening at the tone of what is being said to interpret meaning and feeling. But you are also listening to the words because you also may be listening to what's not being said in terms of what is being communicated. So in essence, you are focused on, you as the listener, are focused on receiving communication from another person's soul, from another person's being. That is empathic listening. I'm really not sure when I became aware of this type of listening, but there is one particular experience that definitely increased my empathic listening skills. And in this particular experience, I experienced it as a listener. So I want to share this with you before we get to the steps of becoming an empathic listener. So about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was working at a Presbyterian church in Hollywood with the urban missions ministry at the church. And this ministry served transient or homeless individuals and also other friends who came to receive resources offered by the church. And when I first started, working with this ministry, I really, really was excited for the learning experience because I feel God was leading me in the direction of working and walking alongside people on the margins. But during the first week, I was a volunteer. Uh, During the first week I was working there, a volunteer pulled me aside, and this particular volunteer had been working at the mission for a really, really long time. So he really had experience. He pulls me aside and he says, "Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and oh yeah, don't do this." And then, you know, he tells me, like, really frankly, you know, you really have to watch out in here. You being a young lady, you have to watch out for some of these guys in here. And to be very honest, even though I know he was kind of helping me and being helpful to me, and him saying this, to me really caused me to tense up. Like really, it made me very tense in those weeks after that encounter. It was like I put up a wall, of judgment between the people that came in to the facility and myself. Um, well, sometime after that, there was a man, an older African American man, that came in to the facility. And as I was working, I noticed that this man would literally follow me with his eyes across the room. He would literally follow me with his eyes. And this happened multiple times, you know, as I was working and assisting people, you know, going to get different things that they needed, toiletries. Um, and um, he would just follow me with his eyes. So one time I saw him following me with his eyes, and I just kind of waved, "Hey, how you doing?" And the guy sees me and he says, "Hey, hey, 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 you come over here. Come over here." So I walk over and I say, "Hi, my name is Jennifer. How can I help you? Can I get you anything? Is there something that you need?" And he says, "No, no, I don't think I need anything. I got everything that I need." And then he pauses and says, "You know, you remind me so much of my daughter." So in that moment, I'm thinking to myself, like, no wonder this guy was staring at me like that. So I sat down and I said, "Oh, really? What's your daughter's name?" And I sat there and I listened to this guy talk about his daughter. He talked about his life. He talked about how he ended up in LA. And I just sat there and I just listened. Yeah, yeah, hey, Pastor Willie, yes, that's exactly why he was staring. I reminded him of his daughter. And I sat and listened to this guy talk about his life. And whenever he would come in to the mission, I would always take a moment and I will always go and sit with him for a couple of moments. And let me tell you guys, this was one of the most humbling experiences that I have ever had in my life most humbling experiences that I have ever had in my life. I mean, the scales, it was like the scales fell off my eyes as I listened to this man talk. So, with this story in mind, I want to share with you these 10 steps to becoming becoming an empathic listener that Stephen Covey mentions in his book. He also mentions it in his workbook that he has with the book of seven habits of highly effective people. So I want to share with you these steps with the story that I just talked about in mind. So here are the 10 steps. Step number 1 is to practice saying, take your time. I'm listening. And when you say it, you really have to mean it when you say it. Step number 2, set aside your own agenda. You know, oftentimes when we are listening to people, in our heads, we are also, at the same time we're listening, we are also evaluating, we're probing, we're advising, and we're interpreting, but we're doing this in an autobiographical way, meaning within our own personal lenses. So we want to try to set aside our agenda and really focus in and listen so that we can truly understand what the person is communicating. So step number 3 is to be available and receptive emotionally, as well as through body language. And this is one example that I really learned by sitting and listening to the guy from my story, that he taught me how to kind of really be present. It taught me how to really be present with somebody who was communicating some really rough things that he was going through at the particular moment. So here you are with this particular step, you are concentrating on the way the other person feels about what he or she is saying. So you are reflecting their feeling, and you're reflecting their feelings through maybe your response or through uh, uh, your body movements. For example, somebody at your job might say, "This project is really getting the best of me. I don't know if I can get. I don't know if I have enough time to get it done." So your response might be, "Oh, you seem a little worried." So your response gives them kind of opens the door for an opportunity for them to further elaborate on how they are really feeling. So step number 4 is to try to appreciate the other person's point of view. You really have to remember that the goal is not to agree, and it's not even to convince or persuade others of your point of view. We are only seeking to understand what is being communicated by the other person. So step number 5 is to listen without being in a hurry to take over. And this is another step that I really learned how to do while listening to the guy at the mission. I simply just let him talk. You know, if he asked me a question, I would answer the question, but then I would immediately kind of give him back the floor to to communicate whatever it was that he wanted to say to me. So if you're just now joining us, we are looking at 10 steps to becoming an empathic listener. And we talked about that. We said that empathic listening involves listening so that we are seeking to understand. And step number 6 is for you to try to imagine yourself in the other person's shoes, or by the other person's point of view. Try to feel what the speaker is feeling. Step number 7 is to help draw out thoughts and feelings of the other person by asking questions. So the questions, if you do ask a question that might help them to elaborate, which is step number 8. Have the speaker to elaborate further on what they're saying so that you can further understand what they are communicating. So again, step number 7 is to draw out thought and feeling by asking questions. And step number 8 is have the speaker elaborate for further understanding. Step number 9 is you may say, let me make sure I understand. And then you restate the issue. So this is called rephrasing the content. And number 10, be sensitive to the speaker's feelings. Be sensitive to the speaker's feelings. So those are the 10 steps to becoming an empathic listener. There are many benefits of empathic listening, many benefits of this particular skill. But one of the most important is that it builds trust and respect between you and those whom you cultivate relationships with. And we all know that we definitely need more trust and respect in this world today. So thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you for taking your time out to join me live and to watch this replay. I hope that you find this helpful. If you do, please like and share this video. And if there is a topic that you would like to talk about, send me an email using the email address in the description. Let's stay connected as we continue our journey on reconnecting with the Creator, with ourselves, with the earth, with each other and community, so that we are transformed into embodied vessels of love to be agents of transformation in the world. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Peace and love.